You may recall that in my review of Secret Invasion, I ended with a reference of a dark rain coming over the Marvel Universe. Well, Dark Reign was actually the title of a large, basically interstitial storyline that took place in between Marvel's major comic events. Think of it like this. If Secret Invasion were the Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and the next event, The Siege, was the Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Dark Reign was kind of like the Star Wars Rebels animated series. Hopefully that made some sense to you. Now, Dark Reign took place during the fallout of Secret Invasion, where, if you remember, Norman Osborn was rewarded for killing the Queen of the Skrull Empire with the title of Secretary of Defense, and he took over as head of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he then rebranded as Hammer. He then started his own dark version of Marvel's Illuminati with the likes of Doctor Doom, Loki, and Emma Frost. He also set about creating his own team of Avengers. This team of Avengers, or the Dark Avengers as they were known, consisted of Osborn, who was rebranded the Iron Patriot, Venom, who took over the identity of Spider-Man, Moonstone, who took over the identity of Miss Marvel, Novar, the renegade Kree warrior who became the new Captain Marvel, and last but not least, longtime Daredevil villain Bullseye, who became the new Hawkeye. And he got his own miniseries, Dark Reign, Hawkeye.
We open up with the Avengers battling against a stolen Hulkbuster mech. Hawkeye ascends the giant machine and manages to open up the cockpit. Hawkeye assures the pilot not to worry, because Hawkeye doesn't kill in cold blood. There's just one problem. He's not really Hawkeye.
Debuting in issue number 131 of Daredevil, Bullseye is a master assassin. His unique ability is that he can throw with such precision, power, and velocity that any object in his hands becomes a deadly weapon. He also has an adamantium-laced skeleton and a penchant for insanity.
Despite Osborn telling him not to, Hawkeye kills the pilot and 36 civilians who get crushed by the falling mech. Later, Osborn chews Hawkeye out, since it's hard to be the good guys when you keep acting like the bad guys. Then Hawkeye goes out to let off some steam.
Now, the target scar on Bullseye's forehead is actually kind of a new thing. It came from a recent encounter with Daredevil. Okay, it actually came from the live-action Daredevil movie, but, you know, that movie's really not that bad, so just go with it.
While out on patrol, Hawkeye comes across 4 men trying to abduct 1 woman. Hawkeye kills 3 of the men and pins 1 to the side of their getaway van. Unfortunately, Hawkeye then slips up and refers to himself as Bullseye while signing an autograph for the woman. So he has no choice but to kill her. After pointing out to the dismayed criminal that he was bound to do the same thing, Hawkeye sends the getaway van over the edge of a parking ramp. It then turns out that a news chopper has been recording the whole incident, and Hawkeye takes out the chopper and everyone involved. Hawkeye then calls Osborn, and the footage the news chopper shot is confiscated by Hammer agents under the guise of national security. Back at Avengers headquarters, Osborn realizes that it was a mistake to try and restrain Bullseye. He decides to send the hired gun out to take out the group who tried stealing the Hulkbuster armor. Hawkeye arrives at the group's hideout, only to find that someone has already killed the entire group and carved Bullseye symbols into their heads. As he wonders what was going on, he's greeted by someone wearing his old Bullseye costume. Certain that the individual is some kind of hallucination, Hawkeye pursues him and winds up running off the side of a building. Hawkeye manages to stop his fall, only to continue to be tormented by the visions of Bullseye. Hawkeye then wakes up screaming. Turns out he was dreaming. Apparently. Osborn then calls Hawkeye in. He shows Hawkeye the body of a murdered senator with a bullseye that has been carved into his forehead. Hawkeye points out that Osborn has been blaming the recent murders on Bullseye, the public not knowing that Hawkeye and Bullseye are one and the same, so this could probably just be a copycat. Hawkeye then walks off. Meanwhile, reporter Ben Urich, who has been investigating the Dark Avengers and Hammer, receives an interesting package from an anonymous source. The package contains documents linking the recently murdered senator not only to the group who stole the Hulkbuster armor, but to Bullseye as well. Back at Avengers headquarters, Hawkeye receives an interesting package containing his old Bullseye costume. After seeing the duplicate Bullseye once more, Hawkeye commandeers a Quinjet and takes off. He's able to locate the dummy Bullseye and they fight. Just when Hawkeye starts to get the upper hand, he winds up being confronted by an army of Bullseyes.
Now, some of you may have noticed that Bullseye, aka Hawkeye, is referred to as Lester on occasion. Well, this actually goes back to that fight with Daredevil where he gained his forehead scar, where his real name was revealed to be Lester. Though whether or not this is completely true is still kind of in doubt, as Bullseye has admittedly lied about his past on several occasions.
Hawkeye begins making quick work of the Bullseye crew, only to be foiled when it turns out that one of them is a teleporter with a taser. Meanwhile, back with Ben Urich, his source gets in contact with him again. The source gives him the name of Bullseye's former leader, Kingsmaker. This sends Urich to visit a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who's trying to live off the grid. The agent flips out when the name Kingsmaker is mentioned, saying that it's not something to be discussed out in the open. Back with Hawkeye, he comes to in an operating room under a neural inhibitor that's keeping him supposedly paralyzed. The Kingsmaker then enters, and Hawkeye refers to him as his father.
Now, the character of the Kingsmaker in his current condition is a reference to a miniseries called Bullseye's Greatest Hits, which chronicled the early adventures of Bullseye. In it, the young Bullseye killed his alcoholic father by trying to burn him alive. Though, even in that series, again, Bullseye sort of admitted that he made up most of it, so make of that what you will.
The Kingsmaker explains that he plans to put his brain into Hawkeye's body, thus granting him a new life. As the robotic surgeon prepares to operate, Hawkeye points out the difficulty in trying to cut through his adamantium-laced skull. Also, the adamantium has actually been blocking the neural inhibitor the whole time. Hawkeye sits up and begins destroying the Kingsmaker's doctors. He then turns his attention to the Kingsmaker. However, Solo, the teleporter, comes in and helps the Kingsmaker escape. The Kingsmaker gets taken aboard a supersonic jet, setting the base's self-destruct as he leaves Solo behind to fight Hawkeye. Hawkeye and Solo fight as the self-destruct begins counting down. Hawkeye eventually takes out Solo by using a ricocheting bullet to predict Solo's teleporting points. Before Hawkeye can deliver a true killing blow, Solo teleports away one final time. Hawkeye then leaps into his Quinjet, which was brought along with him to the hideout for some reason, and escapes the exploding island. Back with Ben Urich, he arrives at a park to talk with his source once again. A sniper's rifle trains on Urich as he discovers the source's dead body sitting on a park bench. Urich's editor, Robbie, then calls him to say that Hammer agents have been appearing at the office. This is enough to scare Urich off. For now. Hawkeye manages to track down the Kingsmaker and the two begin dogfighting in their jets, with Hawkeye pointing out once more that anything in his hands is a weapon. He then ejects just before he crashes his jet into the Kingsmaker's. After landing, Hawkeye tracks down the crash site of the Kingsmaker's plane. Saying that this time he's going to make sure the job gets done, he slowly watches his father's corpse burn.
overall, I'm going to have to give Dark Reign Bullseye a C. It's not really bad, but it's not particularly good. I mean, the writing's passable, the artwork's likewise passable. It's just, Bullseye's just not an interesting character. I don't regret having read this, but I'm not saying run out over to Comixology and grab this thing either. I mean, I don't feel my life has changed having read it. And that brings us to the end of another random trade review. Let's see what we'll be doing next time.